Sarah had always dreamed of living in a peaceful neighborhood, and when she finally moved into her new home, it felt like everything fell into place. The house was perfect, not too big, not too small, and the community seemed warm and welcoming. Every morning, Sarah would sit on her porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun rise over the hills. Neighbors waved as they walked by, kids played in the cul-de-sac, and there was an overall sense of calm that made her feel like she belonged. One of the things Sarah loved most about her new home was the shared walking path that ran alongside her property. It wasn't just any ordinary path. It wound through tall trees, past blooming flowers, and offered glimpses of birds chirping in their nests. For Sarah, this trail was more than just a convenience. It was a sanctuary. She often took evening strolls here after work, letting the gentle rustle of leaves and soft crunch of gravel underfoot wash away the stress of the day. On weekends, families could be seen walking their dogs or pushing strollers along the path, laughing and chatting as they went. It brought people together in a way that felt natural and unforced. The HOA, or Homeowners Association, had always been vocal about keeping the neighborhood pristine. They organized annual cleanup days, planted seasonal flowers near the entrance, and sent out newsletters reminding everyone to keep their lawns tidy. At first, Sarah appreciated their efforts. After all, rules were necessary to maintain order, right? But she never imagined those same rules would one day turn against her, or at least against something she cared deeply about. Life in the neighborhood flowed smoothly for months. Sarah got to know her neighbors better, exchanging pleasantries over fences and occasionally borrowing sugar or eggs. Her favorite part of the day remained her walks along the shared path. There was something magical about how the sunlight filtered through the canopy of trees during golden hour, casting dappled shadows on the ground. Sometimes, she paused to admire the wildflowers growing near the edges, their colors vibrant against the green backdrop. Other times, she'd strike up conversations with fellow walkers, learning snippets of their lives. A new baby on the way, a promotion at work, plans for summer vacations. But even in paradise, clouds can gather unexpectedly. One chilly autumn morning, as Sarah stepped outside with her steaming mug of coffee, something caught her eye. A glint of metal near the gate leading to the walking path stood out starkly against the otherwise serene scene. Curious, she walked closer, only to discover a shiny new padlock securing the entrance. Next to it hung a notice printed in bold letters: "Access restricted." Sarah's heart sank. What did this mean? Why would anyone lock up a path that had always been open to everyone? As she read further, the explanation became clear, but no less infuriating. According to the notice, the HOA had decided to limit access to the trail due to concerns about safety and rising maintenance costs. Residents who wished to continue using the path would now need special permission and pay additional fees. For Sarah, this announcement felt like a slap in the face. How could something so integral to the fabric of the community suddenly become exclusive? That day marked the beginning of a journey Sarah hadn't anticipated. Little did she know, this simple act of locking the gate would ignite a chain reaction, one that would test her patience, challenge her resolve, and ultimately lead her to take drastic measures to reclaim what she believed was rightfully hers. The shiny new padlock on the gate wasn't just a minor inconvenience for Sarah. It was a symbol of something much bigger. It represented control, exclusion, and a disregard for the shared spirit that had once defined her neighborhood. As she stood there staring at the locked gate, Sarah felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her: confusion, frustration, and even betrayal. This path had been part of what made her fall in love with the community. Now, it felt like someone had snatched away a piece of her home. Determined to understand why this decision had been made, Sarah grabbed the notice and read it again carefully. The HOA claimed the restrictions were necessary because of safety concerns. Apparently, some residents had complained about loose branches hanging over the trail or uneven patches of gravel posing tripping hazards. Others mentioned littering as a growing problem, with candy wrappers and soda cans occasionally left behind by careless users. While these issues sounded reasonable enough, Sarah couldn't help but wonder, why hadn't anyone suggested solutions instead of simply shutting people out? Then came the second reason, the one that really stung: maintenance costs. According to the HOA, keeping the path clean, safe, and attractive required money. And since not everyone used the trail regularly, they argued it wasn't fair to expect all homeowners to shoulder the expense equally. Instead, those who wanted access would now have to pay an annual fee. The amount wasn't outrageous, but it was still significant, especially for families already struggling to make ends meet. For Sarah, this felt less like fairness and more like greed disguised as logic. Over the next few days, whispers spread throughout the neighborhood. Some residents grumbled about the sudden change, while others shrugged it off, saying they rarely used the path anyway. A handful of neighbors approached Sarah during her morning coffee ritual, asking if she knew anything about the situation. She shared what little information she had, but it didn't satisfy anyone, not even herself. Why didn't they ask us first? One elderly woman asked, clutching her walker tightly. This path has been here forever. Who do they think they are? Sarah decided to attend the next HOA meeting to get answers directly from the source. Armed with notes and questions scribbled on a legal pad, she arrived early, determined to speak up. When the topic of the walking path finally came up, she raised her hand confidently. "Can you explain why we weren't consulted before putting a lock on the gate?" she asked, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. The response was disappointing, to say the least. One board member mumbled something vague about needing to act quickly due to liability risks. Another mentioned how these things happen when managing a community, but it was the final comment that struck a nerve. If maintaining the path is too expensive, one man said dismissively, maybe it's time to sell it to developers. They could turn it into something useful. Sell it. The words hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. Sell the very thing that gave the neighborhood its charm. The thought was unbearable. As the meeting dragged on, Sarah realized the HOA wasn't interested in compromise or collaboration. Their minds were made up, and no amount of reasoning seemed likely to change them. By the time she left the room, her jaw was clenched, and her fists were balled tightly at her sides. That night, Sarah lay awake in bed, replaying the meeting in her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that giving up wasn't an option. If the HOA refused to listen to reason, then maybe she needed to find another way to fight back. After all, the path wasn't just a strip of land. It was a lifeline for so many people, including her. Shutting it down wouldn't just hurt. It would break the heart of the community she'd come to love. As dawn broke the next morning, Sarah sat on her porch once again, sipping her coffee and staring at the locked gate. Something inside her shifted. Maybe this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. Whatever happened next, one thing was clear. She wasn't going to let the HOA take away something so precious without a fight. Sarah wasn't the kind of person to sit back and let life happen to her. She believed in taking action, even when the odds seemed stacked against her. That's why, after the frustrating HOA meeting, she refused to accept defeat. Instead, she channeled her anger into determination. If the HOA wouldn't listen, then she would find another way to protect the walking path, and maybe teach them a lesson in the process. The first step was understanding the situation better. Sarah spent hours online, researching property laws, easements, and homeowners' rights. At first, the legal jargon felt overwhelming, but she persisted, determined to uncover something that could help her case. Late one night, as she scrolled through pages of information, she stumbled upon an interesting detail. The walking path technically existed on a privately owned easement. This meant someone, not the HOA, owned the land beneath the trail. Her heart raced at the discovery. If the owner of the easement was willing to sell, Sarah realized she might have a chance to take control of the situation herself. But buying the easement wouldn't be easy. It would require money, time, and possibly even some creative problem-solving. Still, the idea lit a spark within her. For the first time since the lock appeared, she felt a glimmer of hope. The next day, Sarah reached out to a local real estate attorney to confirm what she'd learned. After explaining the situation, the lawyer agreed to help her investigate further. Together, they tracked down the current owner of the easement, a retired couple who lived in a neighboring town. When Sarah called them to discuss the possibility of purchasing the land, they were surprisingly open to the idea. They explained that they had inherited the property years ago and rarely thought about it, let alone used it. Selling it to someone who cared deeply about its future sounded appealing to them. But there was a catch. The price tag was steep. Sarah knew she couldn't afford it outright without dipping into her savings, which she had been setting aside for emergencies. It was a risky move, but she felt it was worth it. The walking path wasn't just a convenience. It was a symbol of everything she loved about her neighborhood. Giving up now would mean letting the HOA win, and that wasn't an option. As Sarah mulled over the decision, she began sharing bits of her plan with a few trusted neighbors. To her surprise, many of them encouraged her to go for it. "You're doing this for all of us," one neighbor said, patting her shoulder warmly. Another offered to chip in financially, saying, "If you can save the path, I'll do whatever I can to help." Their support gave Sarah the confidence boost she needed to move forward. Once she made up her mind, Sarah acted quickly. She met with the retired couple again, negotiated the terms, and finalized the purchase. It wasn't easy. There were piles of paperwork, late-night phone calls, and moments of doubt. But she pushed through. By the time the deal was done, Sarah officially owned the easement. The walking path was hers, or rather, it belonged to anyone she chose to grant access to. With ownership came a newfound sense of power. Sarah immediately installed sleek new gates at both ends of the trail, each equipped with electronic keycard systems. She also put up signs declaring the area a VIP access-only zone. Her plan was simple: charge a small annual fee for access, far less than what the HOA had proposed, but enough to cover maintenance costs. Those who paid would receive a keycard, ensuring the path remained safe, clean, and enjoyable for everyone who valued it. Word of Sarah's bold move spread quickly through the neighborhood. Some residents cheered her on, calling her a hero for standing up to the HOA. Others criticized her, accusing her of being selfish or vindictive, but Sarah didn't care. She knew she was fighting for something bigger than herself. And deep down, she hoped her actions would inspire others to stand up for what they believed in too. Once Sarah officially owned the easement, she wasted no time putting her plan into motion. The first thing she did was hire a local contractor to install 2 sturdy gates at either end of the walking path. These weren't your typical flimsy chain-link gates. They were sleek, modern, and designed to blend seamlessly with the natural surroundings. Made of dark metal with intricate patterns etched into them, the gates looked almost artistic, as if they belonged in a park rather than a suburban neighborhood. Each gate was equipped with an electronic keycard system, ensuring that only authorized users could enter. Sarah knew appearances mattered. She didn't want people to see her actions as petty or spiteful. She wanted the path to feel special, like a place worth protecting. To reinforce this idea, she ordered custom signs to hang near the gates. In bold, elegant lettering, the signs read, **** VIP access only. Thank you for supporting our community path. *** beneath the text, smaller print explained how residents could sign up for access by paying a modest annual fee. It was far less than what the HOA had proposed, but enough to cover basic upkeep and improvements. For Sarah, it wasn't about making money. It was about creating a sustainable way to keep the path alive and thriving. The reaction from the neighborhood was immediate and mixed. Some residents were thrilled. They admired Sarah's determination and saw her move as a clever way to outsmart the HOA, while still keeping the path open to those who cared about it. One neighbor, Mrs. Patel, stopped Sarah on the street to thank her. "You've given us something back," she said warmly. "This path is part of what makes our community special. I'm happy to pay a little to make sure it stays beautiful." Others, however, weren't so pleased. A few vocal critics accused Sarah of being hypocritical. "Isn't this exactly what you were mad at the HOA for doing?" one man asked during a heated conversation over the fence. Sarah listened calmly before responding. "No," she said firmly. "The HOA locked everyone out without asking. I'm offering a fair solution. Access for anyone willing to contribute to its care. There's a big difference." Despite the criticism, Sarah noticed something interesting. More and more people began signing up for VIP access. At first, it was just a trickle, a handful of neighbors dropping off checks or sending payments online. But soon, word spread, and the numbers grew. Families who used the path daily signed up, as did joggers, dog walkers, and even a group of seniors who enjoyed morning strolls together. Even some former critics eventually caved, admitting that Sarah's system was better than the HOA's restrictive approach. To encourage even wider participation, Sarah organized a small event to celebrate the reopening of the path. She called it Path Day and invited all residents, whether they had signed up yet or not, to join her for a community walk. She brought homemade cookies and lemonade, setting up a table near one of the gates. As people gathered, Sarah took the opportunity to explain her vision for the trail. "This isn't just my path anymore," she told the crowd. "It belongs to everyone who values it. Together, we can make it better than ever." Her words resonated with many attendees. By the end of the day, several additional families had signed up for VIP access, bringing the total number of participants to nearly half the neighborhood. The revenue allowed Sarah to start making improvements right away. She hired a landscaping team to trim back overgrown bushes, clear fallen leaves, and plant fresh flowers along the edges of the trail. Solar-powered lights were installed at regular intervals, casting a soft glow in the evenings and making the path safer for nighttime use. Benches appeared in shaded spots, giving walkers a place to rest and enjoy the scenery. As the weeks went by, the transformation became undeniable. The once neglected trail now felt vibrant and inviting, a testament to what could be achieved when people worked together, or, in this case, when one determined woman refused to give up. Sarah walked the path every evening, watching as other residents rediscovered its charm. Children laughed as they chased each other around, couples held hands as they strolled, and older folks paused to chat on the benches. For Sarah, these moments were incredibly rewarding. She hadn't just saved the path, she breathed new life into it. And though tensions with the HOA still lingered, she felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, knowing she'd done the right thing, not just for herself, but for her entire community. The HOA didn't take Sarah's actions lightly. Within days of the gates going up and the VIP access-only signs appearing, she received a formal letter from their legal team. It was written in cold, official language, demanding that she remove the gates immediately and restore public access to the path. According to them, her decision to restrict entry violated community guidelines and disrupted the harmony of the neighborhood. They even hinted at potential legal action if she failed to comply. Sarah read the letter with a mix of amusement and irritation. She had expected pushback, but this felt like overkill. After all, hadn't the HOA done the exact same thing just weeks earlier? The hypocrisy wasn't lost on her, or on many of her neighbors, for that matter. Still, she knew better than to ignore the threat. With the help of her attorney, she drafted a calm but firm response, explaining that she now legally owned the easement and had every right to manage it as she saw fit. Her system, she pointed out, was fairer and more transparent than the HOA's previous restrictions. But the HOA wasn't ready to back down. They called an emergency meeting, inviting all residents to discuss the ongoing issue. Sarah attended, bracing herself for a showdown. As she walked into the room, she could feel the tension in the air. Some neighbors avoided eye contact, clearly uncomfortable with the conflict. Others glared at her, still upset about the gates, and then there were those who smiled encouragingly, silently cheering her on. When the topic of the walking path came up, The HOA president launched into a lengthy speech about how Sarah's actions were divisive and selfish. He accused her of prioritizing personal gain over community unity, painting her as the villain in their otherwise peaceful neighborhood. Sarah listened patiently, her expression neutral, until he finished. Then, without hesitation, she stood up to speak. "Let me be clear," she began, her voice steady and confident. "I didn't do this for revenge or profit. I did it because the HOA locked us all out of something we loved, with no warning, no discussion, and no consideration for how much this path means to people. My approach is simple. Anyone who wants to use the path can do so by contributing a small amount toward its maintenance. That's not exclusion. That's fairness." Her words resonated with many in the room. A few neighbors clapped softly, while others nodded in agreement. Even some who had initially opposed her started to see her point. The HOA president, however, wasn't swayed. He doubled down, insisting that Sarah's actions undermined their authority and set a dangerous precedent. When another board member suggested finding a compromise, he shot the idea down immediately. Meanwhile, outside the meetings, tension simmered. Late at night, Sarah noticed strange things happening near the path. Gates were rattled, signs were defaced, and once she even caught someone trying to sneak through after hours. She installed security cameras discreetly, capturing footage of these incidents. One video showed a neighbor, a vocal critic of hers, cutting through the bushes to avoid the locked gate. When confronted, the neighbor denied everything, but the evidence spoke for itself. Despite the drama, Sarah remained focused on her goal, maintaining the path as a safe, welcoming space for those who truly valued it. She continued making improvements, using the revenue from VIP memberships to fund new projects. She added a small fountain near the entrance, planted lavender along the edges for a fragrant touch, and even organized volunteer cleanup days where participants earned discounts on their fees. These efforts paid off. Not only did the path look better than ever, but more residents began seeing the value in Sarah's approach. Slowly but surely, attitudes began to shift. The initial backlash faded as people realized the benefits of Sarah's system. Families appreciated having a well-maintained trail to enjoy. Joggers loved the new lighting for evening runs, and seniors enjoyed resting on the benches during their walks. Even some of her harshest critics softened their stance, admitting privately that her solution worked better than the HOA's original plan. For Sarah, the turning point came when Mrs. Podle approached her one afternoon. "You've changed my mind," the older woman said with a smile. "At first, I thought you were being stubborn, but now I see what you were trying to do. You've given us something back and made it better than before." It wasn't unanimous support, of course. There were still holdouts who refused to pay the fee or grumbled about Sarah's defiance. But the majority of the neighborhood embraced the change, recognizing that her bold move had ultimately been for the greater good. And as Sarah strolled along the path each evening, watching laughter and conversation fill the air, she couldn't help but feel proud of what she'd accomplished. As the weeks turned into months, the HOA's resistance began to fizzle out. Their threats of legal action never materialized, likely because they realized how unpopular it would make them in the eyes of the community. After all, Sarah wasn't hiding anything. She was upfront about her intentions, and her system was fair, transparent, and far less restrictive than their own plan had been. Even some members of the HOA board started quietly signing up for VIP access, though they'd never admit it publicly. It became clear that continuing the fight would only damage their reputation further. But while the HOA backed off, not everyone gave up so easily. A small group of disgruntled neighbors continued to resist, determined to undermine Sarah's efforts. They argued that paying any fee at all was unfair and accused her of profiting from something she hadn't created. One particularly vocal critic even tried rallying others to boycott the path altogether, suggesting they find alternative routes or start using nearby public parks instead. For a while, it seemed like their complaints might gain traction. Late one night, Sarah received an alert on her phone. Motion detectors near the path had been triggered. Checking the security camera footage, she discovered someone attempting to climb over one of the gates. The person wore a hoodie pulled low over their face, clearly trying to avoid being recognized. When Sarah zoomed in on the video, however, she spotted a familiar pair of sneakers. It was Mr. Thompson, a neighbor who had loudly opposed her since day one. Instead of confronting him directly, Sarah decided to address the issue publicly. At the next neighborhood gathering, a casual potluck hosted by Mrs. Patel, she casually mentioned the incident. "I understand some people are frustrated," she said, addressing the crowd, "but sneaking onto the path isn't going to solve anything. If anyone has concerns, I'm happy to talk. We're all neighbors here, and I want this to work for everyone." Her words struck a chord. Many residents were appalled to hear about the attempted break-in, especially since Sarah had worked so hard to keep the trail safe and accessible. Mr. Thompson, sitting quietly in the corner, looked visibly uncomfortable as murmurs of disapproval rippled through the room. From that point on, incidents like these became rare. Most people realized that resisting wouldn't change anything. It would only create more division. Meanwhile, the path itself continued to flourish. With steady revenue coming in from VIP memberships, Sarah reinvested the funds into improvements that benefited everyone. She widened narrow sections of the trail to accommodate strollers and wheelchairs, installed additional benches with engraved plaques honoring longtime residents, and planted seasonal flowers that transformed the area into a riot of color each spring. Word spread beyond the neighborhood, too. Local families from nearby communities began asking if they could purchase guest passes to use the trail during weekends. Sarah agreed, introducing limited-time visitor permits that generated even more income. These changes didn't go unnoticed. Parents praised the new accessibility features, seniors appreciated the extra seating, and kids delighted in chasing butterflies among the blooms. Even those who initially resisted couldn't deny the results. The path had become more than just a walking trail. It was a hub of connection, relaxation, and joy. And for many, Sarah's leadership played a big part in its success. One evening, as Sarah walked the trail alone, she ran into Mrs. Patel again. "You've done something remarkable," the older woman said, her voice warm with admiration. "People thought you were causing trouble, but look what you've built. This place feels alive now, in a way it never did before." Sarah smiled, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. She hadn't set out to prove a point or win a popularity contest. All she'd wanted was to protect something she loved and ensure it remained available for those who cherished it. In doing so, she had sparked a shift, not just in how the path was managed, but in how the entire neighborhood viewed collaboration, fairness, and standing up for what mattered. By the time autumn leaves began carpeting the ground once more, the controversy felt like a distant memory. The walking path thrived, bustling with activity every day. Residents greeted each other warmly as they passed, sharing stories, laughter, and moments of peace. And though tensions with the HOA lingered beneath the surface, they no longer defined the community. Instead, the focus had shifted back to what truly mattered: building a space where everyone could come together and thrive. Months after the gates went up and the dust of controversy settled, Sarah found herself reflecting on everything that had happened. What started as a simple act of defiance had grown into something much bigger, a testament to the power of determination, creativity, and community spirit. The walking path wasn't just a trail anymore. It was a symbol of resilience, proof that standing up for what you believe in can lead to meaningful change. The transformation extended beyond the physical improvements. The neighborhood itself seemed different, closer, more connected. Families who once kept to themselves now exchanged smiles and waves as they passed each other on the path. Neighbors organized impromptu gatherings at the benches, sharing snacks and stories while their kids played nearby. Even those who had initially opposed Sarah's actions began joining in, drawn by the undeniable charm of the revitalized trail. It was as if the path had become the heart of the community again, pulsing with life and energy. Sarah noticed subtle changes within herself, too. Before this ordeal, She had been content to blend into the background, quietly enjoying her new home without rocking the boat. But fighting for the path taught her something important. Sometimes, staying silent isn't enough. Standing up, even when it feels scary or overwhelming, can inspire others to do the same. Her courage hadn't just saved the trail. It had encouraged her neighbors to rethink how they approached challenges and conflicts. One crisp morning, as Sarah strolled along the path, she overheard a conversation between two women pushing strollers. "Can you believe how nice this place is now?" one of them said, gesturing to the freshly planted flowers and gleaming solar lights. "I heard it was all because of that lady who bought the easement. She really stuck it to the HOA." The other woman laughed. "Yeah, I guess we owe her a thank you. This path is my favorite part of living here." Moments like these made Sarah smile. She didn't need recognition or applause. Knowing that people appreciated the space was reward enough. Still, hearing such comments reminded her why she'd fought so hard in the first place. The path wasn't hers alone. It belonged to everyone who valued it. And seeing it thrive under shared stewardship filled her with pride. Even the HOA seemed to have learned a lesson. Though they never publicly acknowledged Sarah's success, their behavior shifted noticeably. They became more open to resident input, holding regular forums where people could voice concerns and ideas. Some board members even approached Sarah privately to commend her efforts, though they stopped short of admitting they'd been wrong. For Sarah, this small shift was enough. Change, she realized, often came slowly. And sometimes, progress looked like planting seeds rather than expecting overnight results. As winter approached, Sarah hosted another community event, a Path Appreciation Day, complete with hot cocoa, cookies, and live music performed by local students. Dozens of residents turned out, laughing and chatting as they celebrated the trail that had brought them closer together. During a brief speech, Sarah thanked everyone for their support and emphasized the importance of working together to protect what mattered most. "This path is proof that when we stand united, we can achieve incredible things," she said. "Let's keep taking care of it, for ourselves and for future generations." By the end of the day, Sarah felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had set out to save the walking path, but in doing so, she had strengthened her entire community. The experience taught her, and everyone else, that fairness, collaboration, and perseverance could overcome even the toughest obstacles. Walking home that evening, Sarah paused at the gate to look back at the glowing trail. The laughter of children echoed in the distance, mingling with the soft rustle of leaves. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly at peace. The battle had been worth it, not just for the path, but for the connections it had fostered and the lessons it had taught. As she stepped through the gate and locked it behind her, she knew one thing for certain. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she and her neighborhood were ready to face them together.